Hello, friends. There is a moment in every person's life when they stand on the edge of something new, a dream, a goal, a calling, and they freeze, not because they lack the potential, but because beginnings feel terrifying. And that's exactly why this message matters. If you've ever felt like you're not ready, if you've ever postponed your dreams waiting for the right moment, if you've ever believed you need more confidence, more clarity, more perfection before you begin, then stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you might become the reason you finally take the first step you've been avoiding for years. The power of showing up is one of the most overlooked victories in a person's life, yet it is the foundation on which every success, every transformation, every breakthrough is built. We often imagine that to take the first step towards something meaningful, we need to be fearless, confident, or fully prepared. But the truth is, most people who make that first move are none of those things. They are unsure, imperfect, and carrying a heart full of doubts, and still they show up, that simple actor, diving, stepping in, raising your hand, admitting you're willing to try is the birthplace of courage. It is where every meaningful journey begins. Showing up doesn't mean having all the answers. It doesn't require a flawless plan or a perfect version of yourself. Showing up means you've chosen to participate in your own life instead of standing on the sidelines waiting for the right moment. It means you're giving yourself the chance to grow even when part of you wants to run. It means you're saying, "This matters to me, and I'm willing to be here for it," even if uncertainty is breathing down your neck. Most people never take that first step, not because they lack talent or potential, but because fear convinces them that they must wait until they feel ready. But readiness is not a spark you wait for, it's a spark you create through action. When you choose to show up, even with shaking hands and a trembling voice, you are proving something deeply powerful. You are braver than the voice inside you telling you to hide. You are rewriting the story of what you believe you're capable of. Think about the moments in life when you've hesitated at the doorway of something new. Maybe it was applying for a job, starting a project, stepping into a room full of strangers, speaking a dream out loud, or simply admitting to yourself that you want something more. In each of those moments, the hardest part was not the task itself. It was showing up. The mental battle that happens before you begin is often more brutal than anything that comes afterward. The unknown feels threatening. Judgment feels heavy. Failure feels humiliating. But when you show up anyway, you create a crack in the armor of fear, and light starts to get in. The act of showing up has a quiet but undeniable power. It changes you before you even realize it. The moment you step into the arena of your own life, you shift from being a spectator to being a participant. You take back your agency. You reclaim your story. You remind yourself that you are capable of moving forward even when your legs are shaking. Showing up is not just about big moments. It's about the small, consistent choices you make every single day. It's waking up and deciding to try again. It's speaking kindly to yourself when your mind wants to tear you down. It's choosing progress over perfection. It's being present for your own growth rather than running from discomfort. These tiny acts of courage accumulate. They compound. They become momentum, and momentum, once created, becomes unstoppable. There will always be reasons to stay hidden: fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. But you don't have to silence those fears to take the first step. You just have to be willing to coexist with them. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. And showing up is your way of honoring what matters. It's your declaration that your dreams, your healing, your growth, your future are worth your participation. The power of showing up lies in the gap between who you are now and who you are becoming. It is the moment you decide that even if you don't feel ready, even if you're scared, even if you're unsure of the outcome, you are still willing to try, and that willingness, that simple, brave decision, is what begins to change everything. Imperfection is one of the most misunderstood parts of the human experience. So many people believe that in order to begin something meaningful, they must first become flawless, polished, or entirely free of doubt. They wait for the moment when everything aligns perfectly, when they feel unshakably confident, when their path looks smooth and certain. But that moment rarely arrives, and while people wait for perfection, life quietly passes by. The truth is that imperfection is not a weakness. It is your permission to start. It is the sign that you are human, real, and moving forward rather than standing still. We are conditioned to believe that mistakes make us unworthy. From childhood, we're taught to aim for the highest marks, the cleanest lines, the most correct answers. This creates an illusion that progress must be neat and predictable, but real growth is messy. Real breakthroughs are uneven. Real courage looks nothing like precision. It looks like stumbling forward with a heart full of hope and hands that are still learning how to hold the dream you're reaching for. Imperfection means you're alive. It means you're present in the arena, not watching from the comfort of the stands. It means you're trying, experimenting, daring to risk your pride for the sake of something bigger. When you embrace imperfection, you free yourself from the exhausting burden of performing for approval. You give yourself the space to learn without shame, to fail without crumbling, to rise without apologizing. You shift from trying to be flawless to trying to be honest, and that shift changes everything. Think of the people you admire most. Not a single one of them became who they are because they waited to feel perfect. They began while unsure, they created while uncertain, they learned, failed, adjusted, and grew along the way. Their greatness was not built on perfection, it was built on resilience, persistence, and the willingness to keep going despite their flaws. What makes their journey inspiring is not their outcomes, but their courage to begin, knowing they would stumble. When we demand perfection from ourselves before we start, we set ourselves up for paralysis. We freeze under pressure, we fear judgment, we compare our beginnings to someone else's middle and decide we're not good enough. This comparison robs us of the extraordinary beauty found in trying. It strips away our humanity. It convinces us that our imperfections disqualify us instead of recognizing them as signs of growth. The surprising truth is that imperfection makes you relatable, it connects you to others, it invites empathy, trust, and understanding. When you allow yourself to be imperfect, you show others that they too can begin without needing to have everything figured out. Your willingness to start as an unfinished version of yourself becomes a light for someone who feels stuck in the shadows of their own expectations. Starting imperfectly also teaches you more than perfection ever could. It teaches humility, it teaches adaptability, it teaches creativity. When things don't go as planned, you discover solutions you never knew you were capable of finding. You learn to pivot, to experiment, to rebuild with stronger foundations. You gain wisdom that can only be earned, not studied. That wisdom stays with you long after the project is finished or the goal is reached. Imperfection is also where authenticity lives. When you allow yourself to show up without pretending to be flawless, you show the world your real self, not a polished mask or a carefully curated version. Authenticity attracts opportunities, relationships, and experiences that align with who you truly are. When you embrace imperfection, you say to yourself, I am worthy of beginning, even as I'm becoming. That statement alone unlocks courage. Every meaningful journey begins with someone who said, I don't feel perfect, but I'm starting anyway. That mindset is what separates people who grow from people who stay stuck. You don't need to be extraordinary to start. The act of starting is what makes you extraordinary. Imperfection doesn't hold you back. Fear of imperfection does. And once you release that fear, you step into a new world where mistakes are not evidence of failure, but proof that you are moving, learning, and becoming. Fear is one of the most natural parts of being human, yet it is also the most misunderstood. People often treat fear as a sign to stop, a warning that they are not ready, capable, or worthy of pursuing something meaningful. But fear itself is not the enemy. Fear is simply a signal that you are stepping into unfamiliar territory, stretching beyond your comfort zone, or daring to want something deeply. The real enemy is avoidance, choosing to step back instead of forward, choosing comfort over growth, choosing the familiar over the possibility of becoming more. When avoidance becomes a habit, dreams shrink, courage weakens, and life becomes smaller not because you lacked potential, but because you listened to fear instead of learning to walk beside it. Fear appears whenever you are about to do something that matters. It rises when you take a risk, when you start something new, when you admit you want more, when you dare to imagine a different future. The presence of fear does not mean you are weak. It means you are alive, human, and courageous enough to stand at the edge of possibility. What shapes your life is not whether fear shows up, it will, but how you respond when it does. Avoidance tells fear you win, I will stay small. Courage tells fear you can come with me, but you don't get to drive. The problem is that most people wait for fear to disappear before they begin. They want to feel safe before they take the leap. They want certainty before commitment. They want guarantees before effort, but fear does not disappear before the first step. It disappears because of the first step. Avoidance strengthens fear, action weakens it. The more you avoid what scares you, the larger and louder the fear becomes. But when you confront it, even in small ways, fear loses its power and you gain strength you didn't know you had. Fear can disguise itself in many forms: procrastination, perfectionism, excuses, self-doubt. It whispers every kind of not enough, not ready, not capable, not talented, not smart, not deserving. These whispers are not truth, they are protection. Fear tries to protect you from disappointment, failure, or embarrassment, but in protecting you from discomfort, it also protects you from growth. The life you want lives on the other side of decisions you're scared to make, conversations you're scared to have, and dreams you're scared to chase. Facing fear doesn't mean getting rid of it. It means learning to move through it. It means choosing values over comfort. It means letting your desire to grow be louder than your desire to stay the same. When you acknowledge fear instead of avoiding it, when you say, "I see you, but I'm still going," you reclaim your power. You discover that fear cannot stop you unless you give it permission. Every courageous person has felt fear. Every bold decision has been accompanied by doubt. Every dream chaser has heard the voice of uncertainty trying to pull them back. What sets them apart is not that they feel less fear, it's that they take action anyway. They understand that fear is not a barrier, but a compass pointing toward places where growth lives. If something scares you, it often means it matters. Avoidance might feel safe in the moment, but it builds a quiet regret over time. You start to wonder what could have been, who you might have become, what opportunities slipped away because you hesitated. But when you face fear head on, even in small steps, you build inner strength. You begin to trust yourself. You become someone who doesn't back down from life, but walks toward it. Fear will always be a companion, but it doesn't have to be the leader. When you choose courage over avoidance, even once, you open the door to becoming someone braver than you ever imagined. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness, but it is actually one of the greatest sources of personal strength and transformation. It is the willingness to show up as you are, with your hopes, your fears, your dreams, and your uncertainties, without hiding behind a mask of perfection. Vulnerability is the moment you let yourself be seen, even when you're terrified of judgment or failure. It is the place where growth begins, where courage takes shape, and where authenticity becomes more powerful than fear. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you unlock a door inside you that has been closed for far too long. The door to possibility, connection, and genuine change. Every meaningful journey begins with vulnerability because it requires admitting that you want something different, something more. It requires acknowledging that where you are right now is not where you want to stay. It requires saying, even quietly, "I desire growth," or "I am ready for something new," or "I believe I can change." These admissions may seem small, but they require bravery. They require honesty. They require the willingness to step into the unknown without guarantees. Vulnerability is not the absence of fear. It is accepting fear, but choosing to move forward anyway. When you open yourself to vulnerability, you are telling the world, and yourself, that you are no longer interested in living behind walls built from shame, doubt, or avoidance. You choose openness over hiding, truth over pretending, courage over comfort. This shift changes not only how you see yourself, but how you show up in every part of your life. Vulnerability becomes the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. It creates space for your dreams to take root, for your voice to grow stronger, for your actions to align with your deeper values. People often avoid vulnerability because they fear being hurt, judged, or misunderstood. They fear failing publicly or not living up to their own expectations. They fear revealing their insecurities, believing that vulnerability will make them appear fragile or incapable, but the opposite is true. Vulnerability reveals that you are human, that you are real, and that you care deeply enough about your life to risk discomfort. It shows that you are willing to stand in the arena, even when you cannot control the outcome. There is unimaginable strength in admitting that you don't have all the answers. There is courage in acknowledging that you're still learning. There is power in allowing yourself to be imperfect, emotional, unsure, or hopeful. Vulnerability connects you to others because authenticity resonates. It reminds people that they, too, are allowed to be human. When one person chooses vulnerability, it gives others permission to do the same. Your openness can inspire someone else to let go of their fear, to speak their truth, to step onto a path they've been avoiding. Vulnerability is also essential for transformation because you cannot grow in places where you are pretending to be something you're not. Growth requires honesty. It requires standing face to face with your limitations, your fears, and your desires. It requires letting go of the illusion that you must always be strong, always be certain, always be right. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you create space for learning, healing, adapting, and evolving. You become available to change instead of resisting it. And the moment you choose vulnerability is the moment you reclaim your power. You stop letting fear dictate the boundaries of your life. You stop shrinking yourself to stay safe. You stop waiting for perfection before you begin. Vulnerability says, I am here exactly as I am, and that is enough to start. It invites courage to step forward. It invites transformation to begin. It reminds you that everything meaningful, every relationship, every dream, every success, was born from the willingness to be open, imperfect, and brave. Momentum is one of the most misunderstood forces in personal growth. People often believe they must first feel motivated, confident, or inspired before they can take action. They wait for a spark to ignite them, a perfect moment to begin, or a wave of certainty to push them forward. But momentum does not arrive before action. Momentum is created by action. Confidence does not precede the first step. Confidence is built because of the first step. The energy you think you need to start is actually generated once you begin, even if you start small, scared, or uncertain. This truth is liberating because it means you don't have to wait for anything outside of yourself. You can create motion by choosing to move. Humans are wired to believe that big goals require big beginnings, but in reality, it's the small, imperfect, often invisible first steps that matter most. The moment you decide to take action, even a tiny one, you interrupt the old patterns that kept you stuck. You create a shift inside yourself, a spark of self-trust, a little evidence that you are capable of showing up. That spark grows with each action, slowly turning into momentum, and momentum, once built, becomes a force that can carry you through fear, doubt, and resistance. But none of it starts until you take that first uncomfortable step. Many people never begin because they assume motivation and clarity will magically appear one morning, telling them, "Today is the day." But motivation is unreliable, and clarity often shows up only after movement begins. You learn by doing, you grow by engaging, you discover your strength as you step forward, not before. Waiting for inspiration keeps you still. Acting before you feel ready moves you forward. Even the smallest action, writing the first sentence, making the first call, signing up, asking the question, opening the book, can break the inertia that has been weighing you down. Momentum builds gradually, but its impact is powerful. When you take consistent steps, no matter how small, you train your mind to trust you, you teach yourself that you can follow through even on hard days, you reduce the emotional weight that made the journey feel overwhelming. Instead of focusing on the entire mountain, you concentrate on the next step, which is always manageable. Step by step, you create rhythm. Rhythm becomes progress. Progress becomes momentum, and momentum becomes strength. One of the biggest misconceptions is that action requires confidence, but confidence is simply the memory of past success. You cannot remember what you have not done. You cannot feel confident about something you have never attempted. This is why the first step often feels heavy. It's unfamiliar, but once you take it, you gain a tiny bit of experience, a small win you can build upon. That win becomes a reference point. The next step feels slightly easier. The one after that feels even lighter. Before you realize it, you've created a chain of evidence, proof that you can keep going even when you're afraid. Momentum also protects you from self-doubt. When you stay still, doubt becomes loud. It fills the silence with every reason you shouldn't try. But when you're in motion, your focus shifts from fear to possibility. You stop obsessing over what could go wrong and start noticing what is going right. You begin to see results, subtle at first, then undeniable. These results become fuel. They give you reasons to continue. They make quitting feel harder than trying. This is the miracle of momentum. Once it's built, it becomes harder to stop than to continue. The beauty of momentum is that it rewards consistency, not perfection. You don't need to be the best. You don't need to do everything right. You just need to keep showing up a little bit today, a little more tomorrow. The path unfolds as you walk, the hesitation fades as you practice, the confidence grows as you accumulate small victories, and through this steady rhythm, you become someone who doesn't wait for the perfect moment. You create it through action. Momentum becomes the bridge between your intention and your transformation. Choosing to begin is one of the most significant decisions you will ever make, not because beginnings are grand or dramatic, but because they represent a shift in identity. The moment you take that first step, no matter how shaky, unsure, or imperfect, you declare to yourself and to the world that you are willing to move forward, you are willing to change, you are willing to try. And that willingness alone places you ahead of most people. It is astonishing how many dreams never leave the safety of someone's mind simply because the person never took the first step. That is why the act of beginning is already half the battle won. When you choose to begin, you break the invisible barrier that keeps countless people stuck in the waiting room of their own lives. You separate yourself from the crowd of someday, maybe, and when I feel ready. You step out of the comfort of possibility and into the vulnerability of action. That transition is bold. It requires courage. It requires honesty about what you want. It requires the willingness to move without certainty. And because so many people avoid this discomfort, the simple decision to begin instantly becomes a rare and powerful victory. Every journey, every achievement, every discovery, every transformation begins with a single, often unglamorous step. People tend to celebrate finish lines, accomplishments, and success stories, but the real magic happens much earlier. It happens at the moment someone whispers to themselves, "I'm going to try." It happens when someone decides to start before they feel ready, before they have everything figured out, before they feel confident or qualified. It happens in the quiet acts of courage that no one else sees. That first step is not a small gesture. It is the foundation that makes every other step possible. The beginning is always the most fragile part of any journey. It is the moment where doubt tries to pull you back into old patterns. It is where fear becomes loud, convincing you that staying where you are is safer than stepping forward. But the truth is, safety is often an illusion. Staying the same may feel comfortable, but it eventually becomes suffocating. Growth, purpose, and fulfillment live on the other side of movement. When you take that first step, you aren't just moving toward a goal. You are choosing the kind of life you want to live, one driven by courage rather than fear. What makes the first step such a victory is that it represents a shift from intention to action. You stop thinking about what you want and start becoming the person who pursues it. You stop dreaming passively and start shaping your reality. Even if the path ahead is uncertain, even if you don't know how everything will unfold. The act of beginning proves that you are no longer willing to let fear, doubt, or procrastination make your decisions for you. You reclaim your power in that moment. Beginning also teaches you something essential about yourself, that you are capable of doing hard things. Even if the step feels small, you experience the strength that comes from taking action. That strength stays with you. It becomes part of your identity. Once you take one step, the next one feels slightly less intimidating. Momentum begins to build. You gain evidence that you are capable, resilient, and committed. That evidence becomes confidence, and confidence becomes fuel for the journey ahead. And even if challenges arise, which they will, the fact that you began already places you on a different trajectory than before. You will learn things you couldn't learn from the sidelines. You will gain experiences that will shape you. You will discover abilities you didn't know you had. And even if you stumble, you will stumble forward, not backward. Taking the first step positions you for growth, connection, discovery, and transformation. Choosing to begin means you've already done something extraordinary. You've answered the call to grow. You've stepped into the arena of your own life. You've chosen courage over comfort. That act alone is a victory, one that many never claim, because the hardest part of any journey is not the middle or the end, but the decision to start.